Welcome to our session this morning. My name is Roisin Mikhalski and I'm Development Manager for FSB here in Northern Ireland. So you're joining our support webinar this morning and we're going to look at how businesses in Northern Ireland can move beyond net zero. And we're delighted this morning to be joined by the team at carbonFIT, who are going to go through a lot of very useful information for yourselves as small businesses. So just to look at the running order of this morning, I'm going to do a short introduction on FSB and then why small businesses might want to be involved and interested in this topic this morning. Then I'm going to pass to Aaron Ewens from carbonFIT, and Aaron's going to take us through quite an in-depth overview of net zero, the journey to net zero for small businesses, the support that's available, the information, things you should be looking at. And then we're going to have a question and answer session at the end. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A box. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put them into that question box. Obviously, if you're watching a recording of this, we can't answer those questions. You'll not be able to put those questions in, but the team are more than happy to take queries from yourselves after the session is over. So just to give a brief overview of FSB for anyone who's not familiar, FSB is the Federation of Small Businesses. We're a member organisation. We have over 150,000 members across the UK and just under 6,000 here in Northern Ireland. So FSB, our mission is to be the voice of small business. Everything we do is for the members and is driven by the members. In order to do that, we have to have a high level of engagement with our members and really rely on communication with yourselves and engagement with yourselves. If you're not an FSB member and you're interested, if you want to know how does it work, do visit our website, www.fsb.org.uk, and in it you'll find a lot of information about the benefits of becoming a member. So just looking at those benefits, we have a range of tangible benefits to become a member, and really those are what we would call back office resources. So obviously as small businesses, you maybe don't have the opportunity to have your own separate legal department and PR department, but as a member of FSB you have access to a range of those types of services. So probably our biggest incentive to becoming a member is our 24/7 legal and employment helpline. So as a member, you can pick up the phone at any time, day or night, 365 days a year, and you will get legal advice from a solicitor. So obviously that's really, crucially important as a small business, that you know what you're doing is correct, and that you have that backup, that it's from a solicitor, a qualified solicitor. And obviously that's part of your membership, so you're not paying for that every time you get those pieces of advice. So as I say, if you look on the website, you see a whole range of those types of benefits that are really cost effective and worthwhile in running your small business. The other side of it then is our lobbying, campaigning side of it. So you'll see FSB in the media quite a bit, always asking for something for our small business members. In order to be effective in that lobbying and campaigning, we really do rely on members to connect with us, to put in what their queries are, what their challenges are, what their difficulties are. And we know over the past few years it has been a real challenge for SMEs across the UK and indeed across the world. So what we have is a department in Westminster, a policy department, who are always engaging with central UK government. Then in our devolved nations, we have policy offices. So here in Belfast, we have a specific policy office who are dealing with politicians and decision makers here in Northern Ireland, and obviously defining what announcements that are made by UK government, what they mean for businesses here on the ground. We always rely on the authentic voice of our members. So when we ask for consultations, for survey responses, when we ask for members to become part of roundtables, it's because we want to have your voice represented to those decision makers so that they understand what different decisions mean to businesses on the ground. So in all those types of communications out, asking you for those responses, it's really important that you do connect with us and engage with us. So I'm asking any FSB members out there, if you see that survey coming through in your emails, to please respond to that. We also then offer a range of events like today's support event online. We have networking. We have our FSB Awards coming up now in a few months' time. And it's a great opportunity to showcase and platform your business and the great work that your team have been doing. So have a look at maybe entering those as well. So that's all from me. We're always an open door if you want to find out more about FSB membership. If you are a member and you're not entirely sure, what you still have access to, feel free to connect with us. Feel free to have a look on the website at the different events that are available in this area or across the UK and join those events. But on to what we're talking about today. Well, the businesses are starting to take a real interest in, what is a responsible business? What are our ESG goals? And customers and staff and stakeholders are demanding that small businesses, as well as the larger businesses, are taking a look at what their processes are, taking a look to see if they're really focusing on things like their sustainability, their carbon footprint, and becoming better players, I suppose, within that platform. So today's session is really to look at how those small businesses can get on board and really, suppose, follow through what's being demanded from them. And suppose at their own core, we can see a lot of our members asking those questions, how do I look at my carbon footprint? How do I get on this journey? So that's what today is about, and that's what Aaron's going to share with us now. So Aaron, it's over to you. And so as I say, put your questions into the chat box and we'll catch up then after Aaron's presentation. So over to you, Aaron.
That's great, Roisin. Thanks very much for that. And good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar today. I'll just share my screen. Bear with me. Wait seconds, right? Everybody can see it okay, yeah?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, yes, so thanks for the introduction, Roisin. I'm Aaron Ewens, the Carbon and Energy Procurement Manager here at carbonFIT, and I'd like to introduce my Associate Director here also, Anne-Marie, on the call, who'll be assisting me and will be at the end of this call for any questions and answers. So for the agenda today, we're going to be touching on net zero and the SME sector, understanding your carbon footprint, including scopes, the benefits of achieving net zero, how climate change can impact your organisation, legislation around carbon and in particular the SME industry, how to decarbonise your business, setting science-based net zero targets, greenwashing and how to avoid it, grants and funding available to UK businesses, and carbonFIT, the net zero solution. So SMEs account for 99.9% of the UK's business population and are responsible for nearly 50% of emissions of all greenhouse gases. However, from research based on survey from 1,200 SMEs last year, it was suggested that only 1 in 4 companies have implemented a comprehensive decarbonisation programme or commitment of reduction to net zero. To tackle this, the UK government are receiving feedback and are reviewing a scheme for 2024 implementation for SMEs, whereby the proposed solution to the array of different net zero certifications available to business is the creation of the Charter Mark Award. The mark would confirm that a business is credible towards an ambitious net zero action plan and be regarded best in its class in its representative industry to promote having a carbon footprint and decarbonisation plan with at the forefront of business minds. So where better to begin than what is a carbon footprint? A carbon footprint measures the total amount of greenhouse gases caused directly and indirectly by a person, organisation, event, or product. The result of this is usually measured in tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, or as you may have seen, abbreviated as TCO2e. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol is the most commonly worldwide known accounting tool used to understand, measure, and quantify emissions. So you'll see here from the illustration, you have your Scope 1 emissions, your Scope 2 emissions, and your Scope 3. Scope 1 emissions are you're directly responsible for. Scope 2 and 3 are indirectly responsible for, but have an impact, which you'll touch on here on the next slide. So introducing Scopes 1, 2, and 3. As I mentioned, Scope 1 are direct emissions, Scope 2 are indirect emissions, and Scope 3 have 15 different categories, but mainly account for your value and supply chain emissions. It's estimated that your supply chain emissions can account for over 80% of a company's greenhouse gas emissions. It is not yet mandatory to report on all categories within Scope 3 emissions, but it is highly likely that the rules around energy and carbon reporting will change as the UK gets closer to its net zero deadline. It is vital for companies to measure and report on Scope 3 emissions to understand their full impact on climate change. So just a bit of information about Scope 1 and 2 and 3 in more depth. Scope 1 emissions are direct greenhouse gas emissions that occur from sources that are controlled or owned by the organisation. Scope 2 emissions are indirect and are associated with the purchase and use of electricity, steam, heat and cooling. And Scope 3 emissions consist of upstream activities such as your fuel and energy related activities, business travel, employee commuting, and your downstream activities would account for categories such as your downstream transportation and distribution, investments, and leased assets. So just moving on to the benefits of achieving net zero. There are many benefits contributing towards achieving net zero, and illustrated here we have highlighted what we think are the most important. Legislation and compliance, having a positive impact on brand image, supply chain sustainability, reduce costs and future risk, attract and retain employees, improved investor opportunity, competitive advantage, consumer client appeal, and catalyst for innovation, sustainable products and services. So how climate change will impact the business and the economy? Climate change refers to a large-scale, long-term shift in the planet's weather patterns and average temperatures. Since the mid-1800s, humans have contributed to the release of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the air, causing global temperatures to rise, resulting in long-term changes to the climate. Climate change is one of the greatest threats to both UK and global security and prosperity. There's now almost 40% more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than there was before the Industrial Revolution, a level not experienced for at least the last 800,000 years. Consequently, what this means, the global average temperature continues to rise, and the last decade was the warmest on record since the late 1850s. In January 2022, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres sounded the alarm about the dire state of the Earth's climate, stating that the world has no choice but to enter emergency mode. Which leads to, this isn't only about global and multi-corporate organisations. All people and businesses are contributors on a domestic and commercial basis and have a part to play if we are to reach the EU goal of net zero by 2050. Now really is the time to be taking action. So, how climate change will impact your organisation? With all dangers and risks comes responsibility and opportunity. Aggressively tackling climate change within your organisation and wider scope carries a wealth of benefits for the companies. Companies can transform themselves into resilient, future-ready businesses designed to prosper in the decades to come, when sustainability operations will have an even greater impact on consumer relevance, profitability, and resilience. We have highlighted 3 specific areas, beginning with physical. Now, depending on where potentially you get your products from, i.e. if overseas, we have seen in the last decade flooding, drought, wildfires, which has a ripple effect within your supply chain. For example, delayed deliveries or products not being available. Industry pending also depending agricultural, food or beverage, crops and livestock have seen to be affected also, affecting timelines and your own deals and contracts to which you have in place. Secondly, we have the liability around risks, meaning the failure to adapt, disclose or comply with updated regulatory requirements once applicable to yourselves. Another we have seen is failure to meet investor expectations and their requirements should you have the vision for growth, expansion or merger acquisitions. Lastly, we have noted here transitional risks, i.e. switching to renewable energies and green supply. There isn't enough for everybody at the moment, so you need to make a move and fast. Consumer trends. What are the people of today buying if not your own products? And market competitors. Businesses change quick and fast, so you have to keep up and get ahead of the game. Bearing that all in mind, with risks come opportunities. So again, we've listed three. Consumer relevance is essentially people are increasingly demanding brands that align with their values, making sustainable options desirable, understandable, easy, and affordable. Business resilience is sustainable business models can drive innovation, strengthen supply chains, and improve the day-to-day running. And lastly, energy and carbon efficiency. Making investments in efficient operations and management, such as on and off-site energy monitoring, logistics and delivery optimization. For example, if you've peak delivery routes on the type of vehicles that's being conducted in, fuel, hybrid or electric, and up-to-date improved machinery to improve efficiency. With these opportunities are neither easy or quickly accomplished. They do have the potential for long-term value creation and are achievable for those with the will to take decisive action sooner rather than later. So just a bit here then about carbon disclosures and legislation. There's a plethora of compliances to which businesses need to adhere to, depending on the criteria, of course, such as size and turnover. However, the two most applicable today to mention to yourselves would be the CRP and Pledge. The Carbon Reduction Plan and Pledge to Net Zero is the minimum requirement for all companies to demonstrate their commitment and intent to net zero. And secondly, the NHS Framework 2024 is where all companies supplying the NHS will have to provide a carbon reduction plan. Others to which you may have heard of or can see in the list here below, such as SECR, which is completed annually and submitted alongside your company accounts, or ESOS, for example, which is every 4 years, which consists of an on-site audit with recommendations around energy and carbon emissions. Whilst not implemented back to you today, the criteria is changing year on year, in addition to further compliances being created to capture the full scope of all businesses' emissions. So just a slide then on how to decarbonise your business. There are 4 key considerations as to when looking how to decarbonise your organisation. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. What's out there at the moment is quite good. Develop a roadmap, identify your start point and track progress with view of final goal achievement. Assess the life cycle of your products and services. So essentially, what are the emissions involved with your products from cradle to gate or grave? Train and empower. Make people aware, teach people, assign responsibility to conduct carbon and energy efficiency. So just for this example here, which you can see on the left, sort of covers the 4 key considerations to which we're highlighting here. This client in particular had their starting point with themselves in 2021 with carbonFIT. And what you can see here is through the reduction of carbon emissions via their own personalised roadmap, they were able to assess with ourselves their full scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, with also the implementation of training videos and workshops for all staffs of all levels. We were able to promote awareness internally, and with that it resulted in less waste, for example, better efficiency, meaning the organisation was able to achieve their net zero much sooner than the goal, which is set at 2050. Now, this client's obviously original goal was for 2050, but by having their commitment in place to net zero and a plan, they were able to achieve this much sooner. So setting net zero targets. I'm sure most of you have heard of SBTI. However, for those who haven't, SBTI is the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which defines and promotes best practice in emissions reduction and net zero targets in line with climate science. So just a quote from the SBTI. Science-based targets are greenhouse gas reduction goals set by businesses. They're defined as science-based when they align with the scale of reductions required to keep global temperature increases well below 2 degrees compared to pre-industrial temperatures. The Science-Based Target Initiative outlined 4 incentives for companies to set SBTs, which is drive innovation, reduce regulatory uncertainty, strengthen investor confidence and credibility, and improve profitability and competitiveness. The 5-step approach to which SBTI recommend is the starting point of selecting a base year. The base year is the first year in which a business sets to do an evaluation of their scope 1, 2 and 3 primarily just to see where the business is currently sitting at. You then calculate your company's emissions. By setting your target boundaries off the back of that, then commits you to achieving those targets by them set dates. Once you've got your chosen a target year for which you want to be net zero by, you then calculate your targets based on your improvement schemes and carbon reduction schemes also that which you have in place. Most recent guidance suggests that both near and long-term targets should be set. As per the illustration, you can see here that the base year has been selected from the company in 2020, essentially, which is their starting point. You'll see also highlighted there is their near-term and longer-term targets with their emission reduction pathway. This particular example, this company needed actually carbon credits to achieve net zero, which we'll touch on in just a bit. But this is, as I mentioned, an example of what it would look like for a company once they've made their starting point. You can also see here on the right-hand side 3 key dates. The UK government's target is to cut emissions by 78% by 2035 and to reach net zero by 2050. For NI, its overall aim is to cut emissions 100% by 2050. And as already mentioned, for SBT, it's a 50% reduction by 2030 with the overall achievement of net zero by 2050. Now, some of you may have heard of this before. It's quite a common, familiar term being used within the energy emissions industry at the minute is greenwashing. So greenwashing is the process of conveying a false impression or misleading information about how a company's products are environmentally sound. Greenwashing involves making an unsubstantiated claim to deceive customers into believing that a company's products are environmentally friendly or have a greater positive environmental impact than what they really do. Following COP27, it was agreed that too many net zero pledges and that have been set by a company are little more than empty slogans and hype. So essentially what they were saying was that a red line has to be drawn around greenwashing, and that we are at a critical moment for humanity and the window to limit dangerous global warming to ensure a sustainable future is quickly closing. We've highlighted 2 of the most common types of greenwashing, which is false or misleading labelling and including use of eco-friendly or sustainable in product descriptions and taglines. Again, if you are familiar with the term of greenwashing, you would have seen, highlighted within the news recent companies that have been called out for greenwashing, 2 which I'm going to mention here is about Coca-Cola and McDonald's. Now, McDonald's had marketed their menu items as sustainable. However, once an evaluation was actually taking place, their products contained substances which was harmful to the environment. And secondly, the Coca-Cola example, they stamped themselves essentially as environmentally friendly whilst they generated more plastic waste and pollution than any other company in the world at that time of the review. According to the Nielsen Global Sustainability Report, 73% of global consumers say they would definitely or probably change their consumption habits to reduce their impact on the environment. So now that you know a bit about greenwashing, so how do you avoid it? The first step is to ensure that calculations that are taking place for your carbon emissions and your footprint is that the calculations are in line with GHG protocol methodology. Your carbon reduction plan is set with the targets that are in line with SBT. Should you require to purchase carbon credits, that it's done in the correct situation and approved by valuable sourced and tracked credits. Purchasing carbon credits, it's the most common method of greenwashing, other than stating the fact you publicly are whenever you're not. Should a company find out their carbon footprint and then proceed to purchase carbon credits to negate the number of emissions that they have, that is considered greenwashing. The purchasing of carbon credits should only really take place once an organisation, say, has looked and exhausted all avenues internally and externally, as some businesses will have to purchase green credits in order to get to net zero. As already mentioned within the presentation, the 5-step rule, you'll see here the first is to measure your footprint and get third-party verification of that. Set your targets and your pledge, disclose and make it public. The 4th is commit actions and projects to reduce carbon, and the 5th is innovation. So just on to a bit about grants and funding options. This is some of the most common forms of grants and funding which have been and which we are using to assist for our clients within the NI and UK. The illustration you can see here provides details of projects which are covered under each of the grant and funding options where applicable. Just by example then, you can see here LED option, for example, is available across NICEP, Invest NI and the ECA scheme, whereas the solar PV is only covered by Invest NI, ECA and the 130% tax deduction. Now, whilst there is criteria to which grant and funding option you can apply for, there is a wide range, so it's definitely worthwhile having a look to see what's available for your business, which I'll touch on a wee bit more here on the next slide also. And I guess I just want to state here also here at carbonFIT, we are able to assist you with your submission for your grants and to keep that in mind for future purposes. So again, staying on the grants and funding topic, regardless of the grant and funding option that you choose to pursue, there are a number of typical questions to which you'll have to answer as part of your application, such as detailing the full project description, your projected costs start to completion, the project impact and risks that are associated with that, and lastly, questions around carbon cost and energy savings. So I guess to make it relevant, by way of example, we've included some headline figures here to which we were able to achieve for one of our clients. As you'll see here, it was just this client we were working with were a heavy manufacturing client, and we were able to secure £80,000 of grant funded for them. Now that was under the Invest NI COVID-19 scheme. And for these guys, the implementation of the project was for 2 solar installations, which resulted in carbon savings of 100 tonnes per annum, which also led to £150,000 savings for these guys. Now, also off the back of that, we were able to conduct green electricity procurement, which also led to a 35% carbon reduction, which exceeded their targets for that year and the year after. I guess at this point, just staying on green electricity procurement, whilst it may not be grant or funding opportunity, our relationships and stance that we have with suppliers in the energy markets, we are able to secure renewable electricity at zero premiums, which helps businesses such as yourselves along your way to reducing emissions, such as the example highlighted. And I guess really the pros of receiving your renewable energy is you're able to get a certification that you're actively trying to decarbonise with locally sourced renewable energy, and also you get a good PR piece out of that, which is good for brand image. Just to let you know also, a briefing paper has been created by us and is to be issued by FSB in due course with all the relevant links for NI and UK grants funding for your review. So just moving on to what is next, I guess the big question is what to do and how to do it. Now, it's been mentioned already about the 5-step approach to net zero. And with the various campaigns out there, ultimately it all leads back to the same thing of the 5-step plan. Now, this one here highlighted is the race to net zero. And you'll see here that it's the 5 Ps, which is pledge, plan, proceed, publish, and persuade. Whilst the path forward may not be easy, it is undoubtedly not impossible. So now that we've outlined the what and the why, I guess this is where we're able to show you the how. We at carbonFIT, we've developed a program and online interactive platform to enable organizations just like yourselves to get started on your journey to net zero if you haven't already done so. So carbonFIT is an online solution developed by chartered engineers in line with SBTi, which provides you with up-to-date energy and carbon targets through our carbonFIT dashboard. So essentially, it's not just a dashboard, but it turns numbers into action with real-world carbon reduction plans, accelerating your journey to net zero. In addition to this, it centralizes all energy and carbon data, highlighting your hotspots via your full scope 1, 2, and 3 analysis. It's able to identify and facilitate finance for carbon reduction projects, streamline all mandatory and legislative reporting, and provide a live decarbonisation roadmap. So carbonFIT, we have three main core principles of footprint, improve and translate, which, as already mentioned, gives organisations their starting point for their journey. So from the footprint, you'll get your carbon reporting and reduction via carbon footprint assessment and certificate. With you haven't made your pledge towards your commitment to net zero, through the improvement category is reducing and removing emissions through the engineering-led carbon reduction planning and projects. You also have access to our technology and investor matching marketplace. And the translate part of carbonFIT is access to carbon disclosures and reporting suite. Avoid greenwashing. You'll be able to fully be compliant with legislation, manage and share improvements with clients, investors and stakeholders. So this carbonFIT platform at a glance then, it's just a few screenshots from our platform which we have designed, which has plans and packages to suit all businesses of all sizes. We've developed a special launch pack providing businesses viewing this with a pledge, carbon footprint assessment and high-level outline reduction plan. And at this point, we're able to say here that for the FSB members today, there is a 30% discount available for all the members for this launch pack in which we are offering. So at this point, just like to bring on to the Q&A, in which I will introduce back Anne-Marie and Roisin for any questions that have popped up along the way there of the webinar. So
thank you so much, Sharon, and just a lot of information in that, and useful, just taking it from the small business perspective, just to take through that journey there and what's available in terms of support in that, because we do know we would have members asking us what support is available out there, so it's great to have that outlined. I know Aaron mentioned a paper that carbonFIT have put together, and if you do request that through ourselves, so if you email fiona.quinn@fsb.org.uk, even for the various links and stuff, if you do that request. But just looking at questions, and Anne-Marie, thanks for joining us for this section then as well. We had one in just about does your carbon footprint change every year, or once you do it, is that it? I suppose that's from a very sort of basic line. What's the answer to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, it will change every year, and obviously what you'd want to do is start with maybe scope 1 and 2. So if a company is starting on their journey at the moment, take scope 1 and 2, which Aaron has run through there. So that is basically your business. If you're heating, it's your electricity, and start with the simple way of doing things. Start with the scope 1 and 2, and then move on to scope 3. So if you take your baseline year and have a look at your scope 1 and 2, then as you move to the next year, yes, obviously you're going to have a little bit more electricity. You're going to use less electricity, hopefully. So that will change. If you're changing between your heating, that will go up and down as well, obviously. And then if you add on scope 3, then that's going to change. Scope 3 accounts for 80% of an organization's carbon emissions. So you need to just take a planned approach to this. So if it's just scope 1 and 2 in your first year, absolutely just do that. Get your head around that first of all as an SME, and then move on to your scope 3 in year 2. So 100% it will change, but you as an organization, when you're reporting that, just need to state, add a line, what's changed. If it is decreased, put in a line to say it's decreased due to, improved efficiencies. If you have expanded, put in a line to say, our carbon has increased because we've expanded, we've taken on another property, and our product production has increased. And in addition, we've looked at scope 3, which is now included, and include the number of categories in the 15 categories, which you've included in that second year. And moving on, year on year, absolutely, it will change. And there's no fear of that, and it's to be expected.
Great, thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Question here seems quite technical to me, but I'm hoping you understand. Does your process involve achieving BSI PAS 2060?
It can do, yes, absolutely. So PAS 2060 is what we would call on your journey to net zero. So really PAS 2060 is carbon neutrality. So it can be as a part of your journey. And what we would say is most companies probably will reach carbon neutrality before they get to net zero, but 100% our focus is on getting all companies to net zero. So just to explain PAS 2060 and carbon neutrality and the difference between that and net zero. The difference is you can buy, as Aaron already mentioned there, or you can invest in carbon offsets, which is part of the carbon neutrality journey. It just means you as an organisation haven't really reached net zero just yet. But a lot of organisations are looking at that as part of their journey and actively trying to reduce their emissions as they move forward. So they're taking carbon neutrality and PAS 2060 on their journey to net zero. But what I would say to any company who's looking to do that, be very obvious about where you're going and what your plan is to get to net zero as you state that you are carbon neutral. That is just basically, I would very much push that. You just need to maintain where you are in your journey to get to net zero.
Thank you. I suppose just looking then with increased costs and the likes of energy, small businesses don't always have much available funds to invest in their journey to net zero. So what should they prioritise, or what low cost measures could they maybe start with? Yep.
So, and Aaron, you can jump in here if I don't cover it all. But what I would say first thing is, know what your carbon footprint is so that you know what you need to tackle. You need to know where the hotspots are in that carbon footprint. Once you know that, the second thing I would say is what Aaron has already touched on is your renewable supply. If you can get a green renewable supply, and as Aaron has mentioned, at a zero cost rate, and no additional cost there for the green supply, that is going to address your scope 2 emissions straight away. Then after that, if you know where your hotspots are, it's basically then putting a plan around that, looking at what grants are available, what funding's available. And also there is companies out there that will help you on your journey, and it's a zero cost upfront and you pay through your savings. And we again can assist with that, but that is definitely an option for SMEs who maybe don't have the upfront capital to do that. There are ways and means, and we can absolutely assist with that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. I think too, a lot of SMEs, I suppose, are starting to understand really the value and importance that, it is something they need to invest in as much as, I suppose new plant or new machinery, that, it is something that's going to really become a sort of intrinsic part of how their business operates. So they need to kind of look at making that investment. And I suppose then looking at that then, the launch pack then that you've mentioned or that you're offering, what happens, if once you purchase this launch pack, and great to see that promotion then for FSB members of 30% on the cost of that. It's really great to have that. But so what happens then if some of our members then join? What's the next steps there, or what happens?
Yep. So the next steps basically is we will gather the information through an online calculator and provide the members with a draft certificate. So it'll basically give you that draft certificate of carbon footprint and tell you as a starting point where you are, what your scopes are, and where the breakdown of that is. So it's a carbon assessment then to say, X percentage is in your electricity, X percentage is in maybe your heating load or transport. And it gives you that hotspot tracker again to say, okay, at least I know now, I have an idea of where my carbon emissions lie. So we'll give so they get a cert, they'll get the assessment report. They'll also get the option to do a pledge to net zero. And they can use that again for marketing material, but it's just really a starting point for any company just to get on board and launch their journey to net zero, and use that for any stakeholder client requirements to say, yes, we do know. Yes, we have an idea of what our carbon footprint is. And yes, we are on the journey to net zero and we've pledged to get there. So it's again showing those carbon credentials and using that for any basically supplier requirements, etc., that they may come across. But it's also as well, we're seeing very much that it's not just supplier requirements, it may be staff. maybe, you know, asking for this as well. So they can, again, state very clearly to the staff, we are on this journey, we take this very seriously, and we've started the journey. So it's a package essentially to get them launched on their net zero journey.
Great, thank you. Another question there, and I suppose very important too, after COVID, with so many remote employees, our business has a lot of remote employees. Which scope do they fall into? And I suppose then how do you work through that within your...
Yeah, I'm going to let Aaron do this because I know he was working on it yesterday.
Yeah, so working from home has to be accounted for within your carbon footprint as well, and that falls under scope 3. So not only does it will come under your, not only accounting for business travel, so there is emissions actually associated to working from home. Now we actually have a survey that captures the information for that, which employees complete. So it asks questions such as the amount of hours that they're working per day, what equipment are they using, is it just a computer, or, you know, also we have to account for the heat and electricity as well for that. So there is emission factors to calculate all of that, and it is included and it's within your scope 3. It's not depending what compliance that you're falling under at the minute. It's not yet. It's not fully mandatory to report on that, but you know, it's good to have that included to see where you're at essentially, and obviously for transparency reasons.
Mm-hmm. Great. I suppose in terms of culture, there, you know, it was touched on that it is a team effort to look at how the business is working towards that carbon footprint. So I suppose there is a cultural thing within an organisation that every member of the team kind of understands that, you know, you are explaining, doing, I think you mentioned training guides and training videos and stuff, but you know, you're bringing everybody kind of along in the journey, not just it's something done to people. It's giving them that comprehension of how important it is.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Let me just see if I have another question. I suppose one round the legislation here are there any implications to the fact at the minute that, you know, the Storms Assembly isn't functioning, and, you know, there are certain targets within Northern Ireland? I think that in any way hinders the support businesses might get down the line, or is it a problem with the targets that we're looking at?
I think it's not going to hinder Northern Ireland and the UK as a whole, purely because they had, I think it was last year, it was 82% was the actual target. They've recently changed that and they've increased to 100% to follow on with the UK guidance. So even though there isn't anybody there in Stormont at the moment, you do have bodies that are there to assist. So Invest in I can assist. You still have your NICEP grants. And I do feel it's not the UK government, it's not the INI government that are, you know, leading this charge. It is most definitely the SMEs. It is the larger organisations as well. So I don't feel there's any risk there. It's going to happen. It has to happen. And I think, you know, the SMEs are in a great position to show leadership here to the government that this has to happen and how it can happen. So this definitely can happen, and the supports and grants are still available there to assist them.
Great, thank you. Don't think of any more questions in there on that. So I suppose just to reiterate the point about the paper, the briefing paper. So it has sort of valuable information in there that will help anybody watching today to start to even consider and think what their next steps are going to be. So to request that from us. The recording for this is going to be available on our FSB social media. So on our Twitter account, FSB NI region, and our Facebook, fsb.northern.ireland. If you're an FSB member, then you'll also receive it through the newsletter into your inbox next week. And I suppose to look at the promotion that carbonFIT are offering then for FSB members, 30%. Is there a time limit on that, just to clarify that? On the discount code?
The end of February. Yeah.
Great. So something to definitely, a new year, new start.
Absolutely.
This might be the time to just, take it in hand. And, it can be very daunting, and I suppose for SMEs to know that there's kind of a package, sort of a ready-made package that will get them on the journey when they're not experts on it. And it is something quite new for people that, it is good to have, a reliance or an opportunity to rely on somebody else to kind of take you through that hand-holding bit at the start.
Absolutely. And sorry, Roisin, just to say, if anybody needs to contact us as well, it's hello@carbonfit.online. Sorry, I just see a question coming in there for a contact number as well. So, Aaron, if you can throw up that last slide there, that answers that hopefully.
Perfect. And again, look, just contact in through yourselves then as well if you need those contact details, just come back to the FSB team. So look, all that remains today is to say thank you so much to Aaron and Anne-Marie. It's been, really insightful, and we hear all these different buzzwords, and it's great to get it in language that we can understand and see sort of the value of now taking those next steps. So plenty of support available for you, everybody that's watching. And again, just feel free to contact us on anything to do with that. Thank you once again to everybody for joining us, for putting in your questions, and thanks to carbonFIT and the team there for joining us for this event this morning. Feel free to go on to the FSB website and see there are plenty of other support events, networking events, and feel free to join us for that. So thanks once again, everyone. All the best. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.